Many parts of the world celebrate today as the Epiphany, but in the United States it gets moved to Sunday. And so today we celebrate on January 6th a saint you should know, Saint André Bessette. He was born in 1845 and lived until 1937. He had a tremendous devotion to Saint Joseph, which is essentially what he's known for. He was born the 8th of 12 children, and by the time he was 12, both of his parents had died. So he worked first as a farmhand, he worked as a baker, he worked as a blacksmith, and all of it didn't end up panning out. So at the age of 25, he joined the Congregation of the Holy Cross in Montreal, in Canada. And after a year in the novitiate, sort of like a training ground, they said after a year, yeah, we don't accept you because of his illness and his weak state. They said, yeah, we're not going to accept you into our order. So thanks to the prompting of a bishop at the time, he said, you need to let him enter. So they allowed him to enter, and they gave him the very humble position of being the porter. And that was the person who sat by the door and welcomed people or didn't allow people in. As he jokingly said, I entered the congregation and the superior showed me the door, and there I stayed for 40 years. And as a porter, he did lots of menial jobs, letting people in, be a messenger, as working laundry, also as a sacristan. And people would come to the door asking for prayers, and he just started praying with people. And he would visit people who were sick, and he would take a little oil from one of the lamps in the church and bring it to people who were sick. And what happened was healing started to happen. Tons of healing started to happen. So more and more people started coming to André Bessette with prayers and asking for prayers. So much so that by the time, at one point, he was receiving 80,000 letters a year. And it was required that there were 4 full-time secretaries just to help him manage his correspondence. So this very humble guy who was just living in a small entryway of this congregation, this oratory, had a very humble room, a bedroom, and he had a window. And on his window, he had a statue of Saint Joseph. And his window looked out at Mount Royal, which is where Montreal gets its name. And he really wanted to build a chapel there dedicated to Saint Joseph. But the people who owned the mountain weren't willing to give it up. So he planted different medals of Saint Joseph on the mountain, and eventually they yielded and gave his order the mountain. So they built a small chapel there dedicated to Saint Joseph's oratory. And what happened was people started to bring crutches and casts and things that showed the healings that happened through the intercession of André Bessette and Saint Joseph, thanks to Christ's works through our different saints when we ask them to intercede for us. And this oratory continued to grow into what is now the Oratory of Saint Joseph, which is the largest shrine dedicated to Saint Joseph in North America. I was privileged to go there last August with some priest buddies of mine and see for myself all of these different crutches and casts and all these different stories that give witness to Saint Joseph's intercession, all because of this little humble servant, André Bessette, who was considered too sickly to enter the order, died at the age of 90. And he famously said, it is with the smallest brushes that the most exquisitely beautiful paintings are drawn. He saw himself as that little paintbrush in the hand of God. So maybe he remind us today, there are times in our life when we're pushed aside or looked down upon or thought nothing good can come of us. We can find in St. André Bessette's example a great example of humility and how God can use us as little paintbrushes in the master artist's hand. St. André Bessette, pray for us.